Hey everybody, P. Turner, executive producer and host of your Break It Down show. Today's guest is JB Lion. JB, you can go to jblion.com. That's and simple. His project is called the Seventh Spark series, and what he's done is with his sons started a storytelling process with them, and they created a universe, and he slowly tracked it and mapped it all out and created this multi-novel set for the story. And I guess the other thing to say is this is a visual novel. Now, I didn't know what a visual novel was starting, but I started to get into it, and basically, to be unfair to that world of creation, it's basically a comic book. So it's not a graphic novel, it's a visual novel, slightly more he'll explain it better than I will, but basically it's akin to a graphic novel. So a visual novel tells a story using pictures and words, but I think really what it is it's more words than pictures. Anyhow, this created universe that he had, I think what you'll enjoy is just one, it's his ability to be a dad and create something that's really remarkable and moves him and his kids. And it's just, he has his day-to-day work, but he also has this incredible passion project. We actually also get into the Black Lives Movement a little bit. We talk about the black condition. He's a black dude. I guess that matters in this case. But I think there's also some interesting insight there into how he sees the world. Anyhow, look, I loved what JB had to say when we had him on. This is the podcast version of the live episode. So you can always go over to YouTube and find that. If not, you can go here in the show notes on this episode and you can buy the book on Amazon. Always good when you buy the book on Amazon. That helps us. We get a couple of dollars every time you do. So if you ever want to buy something on Amazon, just say, hey, Pete, we want to buy one of these. I'll send you my link and then click on it. Boom, we get a little bit of credit. Now, that's always a good way to support the show. In general, thank you all for supporting the show. The show is growing. We've had our biggest month yet, and it's just fantastic. I also wanted to say this. Scott and I are still on our Ride for the Brave through Save the Brave, raising awareness for veteran suicide and PTSD. We've raised a ton of money. We're hoping to get to $50,000. So if you want to help contribute, want to match a contribution to one of our locations, you can always do that at savethebrave.org, or just let us know through the Facebook or the Instagram page. Hey, I want to help out. I want to match a contribution from whatever's going to happen here, or I want to put this amount of money in, or whatever it's going to be. So we always appreciate all of those contributions. Thank you all so much for doing that. One other thing is I'm in Houston today visiting my friend Kirk and recording from his house. I already recorded with Bjorn Lomborg. That's pretty exciting because Bjorn's an incredible guest and I love my friend Kirk. We always have a great time. So thank you all so much for supporting the show. I'll shut up now and let you guys have it. Here's your show for Friday afternoon. Here comes JB Lion.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey, this is JB Lion, and you're watching the Break It Down Show.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
So, JB, I was talking to the audience about, I've never been and bear with me here, I've never been a comic book kind of person. I've read graphic novels. I hadn't even heard of, visual novels in general. So help some of us neophytes understand what the difference is. And then most importantly, why did you pick your specific subgenre to tell your story?
The concept of a visual novel comes from a lot of experiences overseas. So it's pretty popular overseas in Japan, where basically they've taken a play off of RPG video games and have basically come up with novels. So there's basically no game. It's just basically a very intriguing story with very intriguing dialogue and graphics.
Okay.
So what I said was, younger readers, if you look at the statistics, especially for men, reading for entertainment has kind of taken on a downturn. And I think a lot of that has to do with there's just other options out there, right? There's Audible options. And then they grew up in the YouTube era, right? So everybody is able to see some type of visual. So what I kind of did is I took a look at what was going on there. I'm a huge video game fan, so I understand RPG video games. I love them. I play them all the time.
Right.
I love they kind of get you captivated in the whole look and feel, and then you kind of fall in love with the story later. And so I wanted to do the same concept with my books. And so I looked at that. I also looked at what they were doing over in Japan. And then I also looked at a lot of magazines. One thing that's great about magazines is they draw you in with the great graphics, the colors, the look and feel, the style, those kinds of things. And so I wanted to combine all those different elements into what I'm calling, would be a visual novel. So it's not, you get the same description and the same dialogue as you would from a traditional novel, but you also get the graphics, you get the style, and you get the look you would get from a graphic novel. So it's kind of a combination of the two.
From the shots on the website, by the way, everybody should go to jblion.com and then check out the stuff. There's quite a bit of information. It's almost sort of, if I'm going to be unfair, it's like a magazine format where it's like 3 columns and the ones that I'm looking at here. Right. Are there different forms where maybe it's like a quarter pane on the page, or is it more column like? Because it looks, similar to a magazine.
No, it is very similar to a magazine type of layout.
Okay.
If you think of it like a collector's edition you might get from Marvel Comics or something of that nature, I wanted to do it in that kind of a mode and that kind of format. And the basic reason for that is I just think that captures your attention and those kind of things in a lot of different ways. If you can see, probably could see on the website, there's things that are in a certain font style, and then the font style changes to kind of impact, it just show an impact into certain things. So things to kind of capture your attention and to keep you engaged into the writing.
Gotcha. Okay. And then the other question is as you are going through this story, are you doing the illustrations as well, or do you hire that out?
No, I have a friend of mine that I've used before, and I'm using him again to do the illustrations for me. I wish I could draw, but it is not in my skill set. So I definitely contract that out, but I've been working with him for a while, and he does a really good job for me.
This is sort of like writing an opera where you have, the person, the librettist who writes all of the, the stage play, and then the musical artist who writes the music, and these things combined together. How do you guys work on the vibe? I mean, because you have one image, at least again, how it's represented here on the webpage, you have one image to tell for what is that, like 250 words maybe on the page? So how do you guys sync up to decide what graphical part of the story is going to be told on that page?
So, we have a kind of creative sessions for each chapter. And what I'll do is I'll go and I'll pinpoint the high points, as a writer, what I believe the high points are. And then, he takes a look at it and says, hey, from a drawing or illustrated perspective, maybe we bring this in and we think about, what needs to have panes versus doesn't have panes, background versus no background.
Yeah.
All those different things we take into consideration. And, it's an iterative process, you're going back and forth kind of and looking at these different things, and looking at the different drawings and different sketching. So, we definitely take our time with that before anything goes into ink and then final coloring. And if you've noticed, the coloring on there is very different. So I looked at, it's in the age of Snapchat and Instagram filters and all these different things. There's a lot of really cool, illustration and picture altering stuff. Right. And I've utilized a lot of that to really kind of capture the attention, so it's not going to look like, an average, drawing, might just be, a drawing with the same colors, the colors and the different styles will be so different and unique to try to immerse you into the story.
No, I appreciate that background because it is such an interesting genre and a way to tell stories. And for a lot of us, folks, it's like, wait, hold on. This is a viable way to entertain myself. It doesn't have to, I read a lot of really hard books, like the biography of the Constitution and, just stuff like the autobiography of Ulysses S. Grant. And sometimes you need some lighter fare. So it's good to see that. You have built with your novels, you've built a complete universe. I mean, this is an impressive body of work. Talk a little bit about the bigger creation of what you've created.
And, it's been a labor of love for a lot of years. It's just about 7 years in, and I've got many more to go because this is a 5-book series, and only 3 are completed. So I've got a couple more to do, and then there's also a part 2, which will be some more books. So it really came. The whole concept came from a game that I had between my sons and myself. So I have 2 sons. and they're 18 and 20 now, so they're no longer boys. But when they were young, we used to play this game. It was like a King of the Hill game, and we all had our kind of species or races, if you will. And the goal was to outsmart the other, to have control of the universe. And with that, we came up with all kinds of crazy, ways to come out on top. At some point, I just started writing that stuff down, and it just kind of grew from there. I really didn't have an intention, to start writing this book. It was kind of some nagging from my wife to say, hey, you got to do something with this. You got, all of this, all of these journals and all this stuff of all this information. You've got enough here that really makes something work. And so, I said, okay, let me try a few things. And I came up with a very short story called The Wall a couple of years ago. And I put that out for maybe like 6 months just to get some feedback, send it to some critics, send it to a bunch of readers, just to get the feeling, and the responses came back very positive. And so I was like, I felt that, I'm going to make the investment and take the deep dive and give this thing a shot.
Good for you, man. Good for you. So are you still doing a day-to-day job, or have you transitioned totally into writing?
Not as of yet. I still have a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 5, what do you want to say? I was in, I still do some work in corporate America, but I was an executive in corporate America for a very long time. Yeah. And, some of that is this book is a testament to those people that are out there that are out there dealing with that. And, I say dealing with that, there's always highs and lows, but, I don't know how familiar you are with, the corporate world or work environment, but it has severely changed. And, I think there's a lot of people that will tell you, the different stresses and the different things and the different mental health issues that you have dealing with the day to day. I call some of the people the modern day zombies, because unfortunately, you have to take so much drugs and so many different, prescription this and that just to make it. And, right. It's really sad. You work 15, 16-hour days, you work the weekends, you work the holidays. There's just no end in sight. And the drop of a hat, because somebody's, stock quote goes down a couple percentages, your job is gone.
Yeah.
So it's, it's a very, very, dog-eat-dog world. And, I took creative writing as an escape from that.
Yeah. Well, and good for you. I mean, for realizing, that the corporate world is not for everybody, and being able to, even if you're finding a way to survive that world. Yeah, I get it. I'm here for 8 hours, or I'm going to commit 10 hours of my day here to you to provide for my family, do my job well. But after that, it's all my time. It's all about writing and creativity, or, playing in a blues band with my buddies in bars around town, whatever that is. Like, we have to find that outlet to, get that work-life balance in order. So good for you for taking that leap. I love it. I think it's fantastic. What is the process like for you, though, as you're trying to put all this stuff together? I mean, you have to invent everything, So when you sit down and say, I'm going to work, are you sitting down like, okay, kids are in bed, everything's good, and now I get to work on my thing? Or describe for us what that's like.
Well, that's the joy of having a home office. I'm able to close the door and work on my craft. It's a lot of weekends, it's a lot of late nights, but it's for something that you love. If it's something that you love to do, being able to create, I think there's a high in creating things. I think that's why so many people want to write their own book or create their own song or anything. There's a lot of endorphins, or just a great high for creating things. And, my thing is, what I typically do is, when I'm ready to sit down and think of some things, I'm scouring the internet, looking for images, looking for ideas, looking for different things. And when it clicks, then I'm ready to kind of write, off once now, I'm in a different mindset, because now I'm just kind of doing final edits and so forth. But the original creative process, was just a lot. The internet is such a great place, because it's, it's got so many images, so much creativity. Yeah. So many things you can look up and look into and say, okay, I've got a character, what I want him to look like. Okay, well, maybe it's a combination of, these 4 or 5 different images, and you can kind of visualize. And what's, for me, it's a good thing to visualize then I can kind of write.
Mm. We've had a lot of authors on the show, a lot of authors, and a number of them get to know their characters. Hilliard Guest comes to mind, Kat Connor, and these characters, even if they're fictional, they become friends. They live, they're alive, and you grieve when they die. Talk a little bit about how that works for you.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing about putting together a really good story. Your characters, you have to be able to connect with the characters. George R. R. Martin is, a hero of mine as far as book writing is concerned, is because even though, you have all these fantasy elements, he never forgets to focus on the character and the situations that they're in, and they're very realistic situations.
Right.
I do my best to try to emulate that. I really focus a lot on the dialogue and the quirks. I've got one character, that constantly you choose on a toothpick. I've got another one who's has a thing for German symphonies, and he has to have that when he's in battle. And there's a lot of different things to try to personalize that character, so that and it's different strokes for different folks. You never know which character the person is going to connect with. Mm. But that's why each character that you put in, you've got to give them a personality. You've got to give them things that make them connect and make them seem like a real person. So I really focus on quirks, and I focus on dialogue style to make sure that they have their own personality.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, and those personalities bear out. And then I guess if you're like the other authors that do that kind of work, the personalities grow from there and get outside of your control. Like, oh, of course he does this. I know this guy. Of course he loves red pants or whatever it is. And these things start to reveal themselves as a natural, process of you getting to know that character. Is that how you do it as well?
I agree. In the first couple of chapters, you're just kind of trying to map it out. And my thing is, I always want to build the character up first. So, in my outlines, I've got a kind of a character list. I'm trying to build them up. But you're right. It gets easier as you go, as you get further down into the chapters of the different books. You can kind of almost anticipate what that character is going to do based on, kind of how you built their personality and how they react in certain situations. So it becomes easier to create that dialogue or to create those different situations and how they respond.
Hmm. In the book, you say in one sentence, this is from the website jblion.com, a story of good versus evil, which challenges the moral and spiritual beliefs in all of us as humans. That's such a powerful way to look at that, and oftentimes good versus evil puts you on the horns of a dilemma, because your good and their good are both good. They just don't agree when push and shove come together. Talk a little bit about that part of the process, because, that's where plot twists live,
Absolutely. And the entire arc of the series is going to be told from five. It's going to be the same story, but it's told from 5 different perspectives. And a lot of them, all 5 different, have different point of views. They're going to be from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different races, different types, different beliefs. And that's where this whole gray area between good and bad comes through, right? Because it has to do with a matter of perspective, right? If you grew up in a certain area, or you did a certain thing, or you believe in certain aspects, then potentially, what is really good and bad is a lot of things that I really try to harp on. And I really try to get the reader to start to think about. It's like, okay, how am I making my choices on what's good and bad? And at the end of it, at the end of the series, my hope is that, somebody will take that and take some of those things to heart, and, take a good look at themselves and say, hey, maybe my assumptions about certain things weren't as crystal clear as I thought they were.
Yeah. Or they fail the test when they get applied to real life, right? Like you encounter these things, especially like right now, there's so much animosity and stress in the world, internally focused thoughts. And you look at somebody else's point of view and you're like, God dang it.
No, that's perfect sense. I mean, based on, and it's based on your environment, based on what you're doing, even I go to the point of, the angels versus the demons. It's all a matter of perspective. The way that they write the angels and the demons, it's all, they pretty much have the same goals in mind. They just are on a different side. I even have a few of them negotiate with one another for souls. from the same entity. They just decided to take different sides.
Yeah.
A lot of that going on. It'll definitely tug at your heartstrings. Look at different points of view, and let you make your own decisions.
When I was working in Iraq, I had a really interesting conversation with the guy who was Yazidi, and they, I guess, to be unfair to their faith, they are Satanists of a sort. But really, when you talk to the guy, like this guy enlightened me on it, he said, yeah, God and Satan had their war, but you understand, God is all forgiving, right? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, they made up. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know what? You're right, because God's about love. And it's like, yeah, and then Satan's job is to present the natural, the earth. And then, you're supposed to do the things to become spiritual and go towards God. And so this is just a different path to spirituality. It's not that we worship terrible things. It's that we worship God. It's just on this path with his number one guy, and I'm like, well, now I'm a big jerk because I just made these assumptions about, who they are. And just with a few quick words, the guy explained what they do. And I can't get mad at that,
Right. And that's, even especially what's going on right now with this madness, everybody's got to look at a person's perspective and try to keep those things in mind, which is hard. It really is hard because beyond, some of the race relations things that are happening today, I think the impact is more even on the socioeconomic than it really is the race. And that's what people forget. I think you've got people that live in certain conditions in certain areas and have to deal with certain things that have one perspective, and you have others, no matter what color they are, that live in certain areas or with other perspectives. I think that is the biggest prejudice that we have out there today. Not to say that race relations doesn't matter. It's a huge issue, but socioeconomic issues, I think, overshadow those and sometimes are forgotten when we talk about that. I think that a lot of times it's a distraction. Race is kind of a distraction to real socioeconomic issues and opportunities for advancement, because I think that hits all races depending on where you're at.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, the more I've looked around at this, being poor is the ultimate group that has every problem is harder. Every time you encounter the government, it's a cost that you can't bear. It's just over and over again, you're just met with these challenges that folks of privilege, just folks, they are able to absorb those hits a lot easier. And for some people, they're nothing. There's plenty of people that are like $1,000 check. Yeah, whatever. I already made $1,000 thinking about this check. It's like, wow, not me. I have to save for 10 months to have it. And in the meantime, I'm out of compliance or whatever those things are. So for sure, the socioeconomic problems definitely create a lot of chaos. It seems so. When you review your website, there's some pretty heavy hitting philosophy going on there. You're steeped in Hume and that kind of thing, and it sounds like you got a bit of modern day C.S. Lewis in you too.
Definitely, again, want people to think and to discuss their spirituality and what they truly believe. I have my beliefs and I stand by those beliefs. But that doesn't necessarily mean I can't listen to another person's point of view and learn something. Another thing that I really wanted to make sure that this book was for everyone, all beliefs. Obviously you got the angels and demons. So of course you get some of the, you get the Christianity element, of course. Right. But I didn't want my book to come off, as holier than thou or anything of that nature. I wanted it to be honest, conversations and different things to really move the plot ahead, but to really discuss a lot of gray areas. I really wanted to focus on the gray areas and make people, make a decision for themselves. I did not want this book to come off as, any kind of, this is the way everything is, and this is what you need to believe, and those things. I wanted to make sure I did not do that.
You're hitting on an important part of modern society where if you're not caring for your spiritual health, there's real problems. There's real cost to that, to have no, it's not that you have to be God-fearing, because as society becomes more successful at taking care of more people, God-fearing kind of drops down. This is not Ireland 100 years ago where God was always around the corner about to get you. If you don't provide for your spiritual well-being, just like your mental well-being and all the other things that are not physical, you have to account. And the other thing too, and this I'm sure will strike positively with you, we have access to all the information ever, and we aren't any wiser for it, So talk a little bit about your thoughts on these things, because, that spiritual well-being, man, I can't say enough positive things about taking care of that, to be accountable to others in general, to build tolerance in yourself.
It's all about balance, right? When you look at life balance, I'm a firm believer that your spirit is just as important as anything else. Your physical health, mental health, your spiritual health is just important. It guides the other health, especially with your mental health. If your spiritual health and your mental health, aren't in line with one another and aren't in balance, I think that you become out of balance very quickly, depending on how stress is applied, right? I think it all depends on your circumstances. We talked about earlier. If you're not going through particular senses and circumstances, then maybe at that point in time you might think, oh, well, everything's fine. But you've had some of the richest, most wealthy people in the world commit suicide. I remember, I don't know if you're a fan of Dave Chappelle, but he had a comedy series where he talked about Anthony Bourdain, and he said, this guy, he traveled the world living, tasting exotic food. He had what people would think would be the dream job. He went everywhere across the world. He didn't have to pay for anything. He had his own TV show, whatever. The guy ended up hanging himself. And then he counters that by telling a story about a guy he grew up with that was about 2 courses away from becoming a lawyer, got married, ended up leaving law school, and was working at like a Foot Locker as a manager. Yeah. And he said, never occurred to this guy to kill himself. And I just thought that was hilarious because, I just think it depends on your spirit, and are you content with who you are? And can you go out every day and just thank God, or, whoever you thank, and say, hey, I'm here, I'm alive, I'm well, spiritually. I think it makes a huge, huge difference. Because when those tests and trials come up, and my book is a lot about that, there's a lot of tests and trials and things that happen, what really happens, to you spiritually, and how they handle it, has a lot to do with how they end up in the end.
Let's talk a little bit more specifically now about the novels themselves, because there's a lot of work here, and you're 3 novels into the 5 novel set. Is that correct?
That's right.
So let's talk about the structure, and let's just start with novel 1. Like, what's the basic premise, the titles, all that stuff?
For book 1, it's the basic premise is kind of introduces you into what the 7th spark is. That's what you'll learn exactly what the whole series is about, what the 7th spark is. It talks about a plot between some different entities that are trying to destroy the realms of men as they know it, and bring about revelation. So basically you have 12 realms of men. So instead of 1, this is you have 12, and you have particular protectors who are angels who protect those 12 realms. And so it talks about a lot about those angels and kind of how they go about protecting those realms. And it's a very good, I try to introduce a lot of different themes there, things that, people wouldn't normally expect. These aren't typical angels. These are warriors. Their only motivation is the eradication of evil and being successful. They don't have the same emotions as humans. They're totally different. The only thing is that they're doing is they're basically making sure that, the realm that they protect is protected, and that they're eradicating evil. So they're very prideful people, or beings, if you will, and they really don't associate with man. The thing is, the big crux is that they believe that man gets a pass because they can walk in the light and the darkness, if you will, at will, whenever they feel like it. Whereas angels are held to a much higher standard. And so there's a lot of conflict between that, because they're like, hey, I'm here risking my life. I'm fighting demons and doing these different things every day. Whereas, a human can invite in a demon anytime they want, and they'll be forgiven. So there's a lot of kind of animosity and angst about that. A lot of book 1 talks about the brotherhood within those angels. And there's obviously a set of events that kind of breaks that bond at the end of it, and then you get a feel for one of the realms that actually encounters the 7th spark being lit, and the consequence of that happening.
So the first book is called Book One, Knights of the Trinity, and then someone is trying to hotwire the apocalypse. Well, why is someone always trying to ruin everything for everybody? Like, what is wrong with people?
Yeah. In this particular story, it's funny, and I don't want to give away too much,
right.
But it's one of those things, since the beginning of time, there's always somebody trying to end it for their own personal reasons. And in this particular case, the primary antagonist in the story, he does it really because he loves man. And it sounds funny. Why would you want to destroy them? But the rationale is he loves them so much that he wants them to basically be able not have to make this choice every single day. He looks at it as free will has destroyed man, and that God is the one who gave it to them. So if he takes that away, then they can all live in harmony.
Right.
So it's a very different approach.
And then which one's the second one? Episode 2, Rite of Passage?
No, the second one is it's called Band of Brothers. And
Band of Brothers. Right. Okay.
That particular book is about a group of special ops forces. It's basically called the Wrecking Crew. So they have the main character name there's Forge. He joins a special ops group, and their entire objective is to protect the Commonwealth. So the Commonwealth, think of it as kind of a United Nations, very rich countries that their basic goal is to keep the poor countries down. And so they hire kind of a group of mercenaries that do things that are kind of off the record, take care of problems that they don't want to get any publicity on. This Forge is the leader of that group. The book goes really into and explores their bond and kind of how they get by on doing what they do. And then the strength of their bond is tested when they actually come across a demon, a foe that's not of this world. There's actually a demon. They come across it, and they have to actually fight this demon. And when that happens, things go very, very, very wrong. Then it creates this conflict between the leader and the rest of his group. At the end, they basically got to either stay together as a bond, or it's going to be forever broken. And that's kind of the overall arc with that particular story.
And then the final book that you have written already is Shadow's Curse.
Yes, and Shadow's Curse. It's a book about a guy's name is Valantis Wright. He's a knucklehead, basically got to all kinds of trouble within his youth. And then he has an out of this world experience with God, and he changes his whole life forever. And this book really explores a lot of issues, that are going on currently, is that he changes his life and he becomes basically what you would say is a modern day type of vigilante. And he recruits a group of people, and they call themselves the Shadows. They're basically the unseen, but they go about doing, I would say, would be the work of God. This story arc is a lot about, the state of the current church, has a lot to do with the state of men currently, has a lot to do with, how we basically go about judging people. And, are people truly forgiven? Or certain sins, worse than the others, and those kind of things. So I explore a whole lot of that in this particular book, and what the true meaning of justice really means is what I really try to harp on. And again, it's up for the reader to make up their own mind on whether that's right or whether they agree or disagree. It's going to be a lot of conversation around the true meaning of justice and doing the right thing.
Yeah, justice is hard, right? I mean, again, it's a balancing act on what is just and what is not. I mean, you can just look at history and say, hey, the Nazis killed a whole bunch of people, and that was unjust. But the Russians, cool. The Americans, cool. They won. It's okay.
Absolutely.
So when we look at the collection of books, are they all available currently? And is the best spot jblion.com, or should they go to Amazon, or what's your recommendation for that?
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here, and if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
So when we look at the collection of books, are they all available currently? And is the best spot jblion.com, or should they go to Amazon, or what's your recommendation for that?
The books will be available on September 1, 2020, and the first two will be available. So how I'm doing it is going to have the visual novels and the traditional novels out on September 1. They'll be available for pre-order July 1st.
Okay.
So the best thing to do is just to go to www.jblion.com, look at the product category, and that'll get you over to the Amazon sites.
Okay.
They will be available on Amazon starting July 1st,
Okay.
pre-order. I also will have, if you looked on the catalog, and that was some of the things you said, I'll also have mini episodes, which will be smaller versions of the visual novel and at a lower price. So this will be for the person, hey, look, I don't want to pay the X amount of price for the full novel. Let me just read a couple episodes, see if I like it. You'll have those episodes will be available via ebook, and so that'll be an option as well.
The spiritual aspect, I thought I would ask you about that because, again, you're heavy on the philosophers and everything, but who's in front of you kind of lighting the way towards the spiritual side? Like whose work are you drawing from to? Because like your vigilante guy sounds a little bit like Paul, like there's obviously fingerprints of the scriptures in what you do. So who's your guide?
Well, I would say, I really try to trust my spirit. I am a Christian. I believe in Christ. I read my Bible every single day, and I try to draw from stories from that. One of the things, since we're talking about this, because we always talk about, what's good, what's truly bad, I had some real experiences, as I was going through the corporate world and dealing with different things and dealing with the church and dealing with different things that really kind of round out a lot of the things that I talk about in my book. And a lot of it has to do with, again, what's truly good, what's truly bad, what do you truly believe in? And the reason I say that is because I think any Christian, anyone who knows anything about the Bible, let's just take a really popular story. Let's take David for instance. Let's take David. Everybody that you would talk, every Christian that you would talk to, or any non-Christian that just knows the Bible would say, "Oh yeah, David, he's in heaven, right? He was a good guy. He was in heaven, right?" But if you asked about, I don't know, Bobby Joe down the street who maybe had an affair on his wife, obviously people are very critical of that particular individual. Well, as we all know, David had plenty of affairs and actually got a man killed over an affair because he wanted a wife so bad. And so, again, it's a matter of perspective, right? And it's a matter of, are we truly forgiven or are we not, right? And there's this whole judgment factor that I think has gotten out of hand, especially in current society, right? We want to know everything about everybody. And, as soon as we find out one negative thing, it cancels out all of the positive. And it's so much hypocrisy in that. And I think that it clearly shows you in the Old Testament. I mean, how many times were people killed, murdered my brother and all these different things, but these are Christian pillars, right? That we hold up. And they were flawed, severely flawed. And I think that's the reason the Bible comes in two parts, because it's the hey, this person, you take Jacob. Jacob wrestled God physically. How nice would it be to me to actually see God and him to tell me what to do, right? I don't get that, right? We don't get that. And since the New Testament, you don't get those opportunities now. So you're telling me you had a one-on-one encounter with, and you still wrestled with him because you didn't want to do what he wanted you to do. And that's amazing to me. You look at those different things and you say, how much of a hypocritical society have we truly become? Because are we really forgiven, or are we going to be judged by every little action that we do? Is there something more, right? Is there something more to our spirituality other than just being right all the time or doing the right thing all the time? And that's what I really try to challenge.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a lot of ways, we're birds of a feather. Folks talk about someone being a bigot, and bigot and intolerance, those are synonyms. And so if you can't tolerate someone else, guess who's the bigot? Like, you're all bigots.
Right.
It's a universal human value, like just like racism. This is Pete talking. This is not, I'm not going to put this on JB, but racism is sort of a human value. Like, we pick things. And it doesn't have to be race. It can be, I'm reading Frank McCourt's fantastic book, about his life. And if you were from the north of Ireland, you were treated differently. Just the north of Ireland, like across the road, and Protestants, and they were drunks, so whether it's color or religion or location, this is what we do, unless you force yourself into some kind of enlightenment, whether it's through religion or, a sweat tent or whatever it's going to be. You have to go through trials to realize, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I got to be a whole lot nicer because I make more errors than I know I make a lot of errors. And that means that there's errors I don't even see that I'm making, in judgment and assumptions and everything. So you're right, man. Like, we are really unfair to other people. And I was having this conversation today, talking about like judging people on a picture, like the picture of the guy in Subway with the AT4 on a thing. That's, I don't like it's a fucking picture. It's just a picture. Like, you cannot make that much of a statement. Yes, there's 1,000 words, but you have 1,000 words. I have 1,000 words. They're totally different words. Like, we've got to lighten up a little bit and allow people to be people,
Well, people are flawed, right?
Yes.
And all people are flawed. All people are flawed, and all people have prejudices in different things. Again, this is a really tough time and a tough subject for me, because being an African American and being Black and the things that are going on in today's right now is really sad. And and to be honest, I've seen it and I've been a victim of it. But at the same time, I understand that people are different and we all struggle with things, and it makes it very hard. Look, I didn't really want to get into this today, but it does make it very difficult to protect and serve if the people that you're trying to protect and serve are very angry. And the other way, you have an issue where if you continue to do the same things, you're going to get anger.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to mend that, because on both sides there's fear.
Yeah.
And if you both have that fear, then that's where all the prejudice comes in. And that's where all of the angst comes in. And then I really don't really know how, as a society, we're going to truly mend it, because there's so mistrust on both sides.
Yeah.
And it's come because of so many years of the mistrust. I don't know how you mend it. But I will say, that this is becoming an overarching problem. And the one thing I do like, is if you've seen the rallies and everything that's going on, you see a lot of people of different color coming out and supporting and doing different things. But you also see that causing problems as well. Just to be honest, I went to one of the protests, and it was some of the people that didn't look like me causing more problems. So it's tough right now. It's tough right now. I think everybody, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of anger across the board for whatever reasons, because there's all these different prejudices, gay, straight, race, Black, white, whatever.
Yeah.
It's in a, we've got to somehow harness that in a better way. And I don't know what the answer is. A lot of it is just having honest conversations with one another, but we don't seem to want to do that. So until we do, I don't know how we get around it.
Yeah, but I mean, there are ways to do it. And I think you're doing it. You're putting pen to paper and brush to color, and you're trying to illustrate that. Look, I'll say this. Being locked up in my house, trying to, abide the social construct of a pandemic, is hard. people suck at it. Like it's pushed me into depression, that kind of thing. And I'm good at being deployed, but like I don't know what to do. The information changes all the time. Oh, okay. And now we're going to exacerbate that with this tragedy. And so people are lashing out in the only way they know how, and it's poorly. Like when people die, people are terrible at people dying. Like you can go through family death over and over again, but at some point, like you may have an adverse reaction to it because it's impossible to get right. There's no training manual like, okay, this person has died. Now you will, like maybe there's a training manual, but we don't get that manual. So we have to learn these lessons through experience and wisdom, and that wisdom is hey, slow down, be tolerant of one another. That's one of the things we try to do here on the show is to create understanding, to some tolerance. And if a person is on step 7.2 and having a bad day, so they're performing at a lower level, you have to like allow them that. And then, by the way, you're doing the same thing. It's just, but it turns out, JB, there's not a meter above my head on where I'm performing. So maybe my position on COVID is evolving. Maybe my position on police violence is evolving, but I need a minute to get there, and maybe you got there too fast without all the facts. And you're doing it, man. You're doing it. Like these kind of novels help us we got to find a way to chill out. We've got to find a way to stop escalating problems. And, the response of violence for violence is not a long-term solution. I understand that as a reaction, but we have to get past that stuff.
No, I totally agree. And then it just, it causes mistrust. And it's a laundry list of issues where we're just trying to, but as you say, people are flawed.
Yeah.
And you get a whole bunch of flawed people together and angry, and then that's what you get. That's the result that you get. And then, but what you say is so true. And I try to express it in my books is to, just to have people think about another perspective. Think if you're in these particular situations, how would you respond?
Yeah.
And when you put pressure on somebody, that's when you truly see how they react. And a lot of times the best person doesn't come out, and that's okay because we're flawed. And like as you say, there is no it's kind of like this measuring stick. Where's the measuring stick?
Yeah.
Who controls the measuring stick, and who tells me that I'm good or you're good or
right.
That's the whole premise of and I think that's why a lot of people they do write or they do sing or they do different things. I think they want to try to get those types of points across, and that's what I'm trying to do with my books.
But it's part of the measuring stick. Your book gives people an idea of where they are, because it's one thing for someone else not to know where you are, but you have to understand where you are, especially. I mean, that's really where the hard work begins. The other thing about all of this philosophical stuff we're discussing is it's okay to screw it up. It's okay to get it wrong, And then another piece I want to add into what you're saying is when you add in perspective, because this is a lot of what I did as a spy was I bring the perspective of the group that I was talking to, whether it was us or them. And I would travel from the us space to the them space in any direction that it was and communicate as best I could who they were. And so you realize after a while that I don't think I would act differently if I was raised in Afghanistan or if I was raised in an urban black area, like I would be a product of my environment, of my experiences, of my uncles. And it makes it a lot easier to go, I got to slow down. And again, I keep saying slow down and just be less of an, presumptive jerk to think I understand who this person is until you get to know that person. And again, a picture, not good enough. Like you and I have talked a couple of times now. All right, one time. We would have to talk a whole bunch to really know the essence of who I am and who you are. We can extend trust, but for me to know you, it takes more than 1,000 words to know who you are,
Absolutely. And then the thing that makes it worse is the media, they blast somebody in their worst possible, most stressful, at their worst.
Yes.
And then we make a judgment at somebody at their worst. I mean, I would not want to be judged at my worst.
Yeah.
I mean, because it wouldn't be a very good situation for me, and I'm sure nobody would be listening to this podcast. Because we've all done crazy stuff.
Yeah, I have a lot of bad moments. Great example of not my bad moments, but of what you're saying is Remember that recording of Alec Baldwin dressing down his daughter? What no parent ever wants is a recorder at the point where they're at their wits' end and past and yelling things, and they're like, oh, I'm so mortified. And we carry this stuff with us for the rest of our lives. Maybe you get over it, but I would never want someone to record everything. Whoever the president is, they're recording every word you say and using it in whatever way they can to make you look horrible. So you're right. We are all flawed and we make mistakes. And then our mistakes can be used in a way that I never intended that, you know? I never intended to create that offense. Absolutely. I'm not that person. And like if you were to say, Pete, you're a racist, and now what am I going to say? I'm in the racist bottle. I can't get out. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like it just doesn't work. So you're right. Like us at our worst is the worst time to look at it. And that brings in like the police side of this thing. You think about someone whose job is exceptionally dangerous. You know, they have to wear a bulletproof vest to work. How many people have a job that's more dangerous than that in the States? Like there are some, but you know, they're always at risk of their life. They encounter people quite often at the worst point of their day, if not of their life. They run into fire. They run into all these things. And we expect them to not take damage from that. And it's just impossible to see people like family strife openly. And they're in the house, in someone's house, in between mom and dad or whatever it is. And they're supposed to do that day after day, year after year, and not come back with some kind of damage. I don't, as a combat guy, I don't see how you do it.
I get that. And I think, you know, I'll use something in a parallel to make it a little bit easier for me to try to understand where I'm coming from. My wife, she was a substitute teacher for many years, maybe 5-6 years. And the one thing that she told me all the time was, you know, how bad the education system is. We're in Texas. You know, I don't know how, you know, we live in I would say an affluent area. And, even in there, she's like, oh man, the education system's so bad. You know, we have to do this, we have to do that. Yeah. You know, they don't let us teach anymore. All these different things. I started to think about it. And you know, the first thing I asked her, I said, well, do you really have a desire to teach? She said, nah, it's not really my thing, but I'm doing it to get paid.
Yeah.
And I think education, right? I mean, if you wanted to be educated by someone, right? The kids don't get a choice on who educates them. You know, adults do, right? Adults do, because they could say, hey, look, I'm going to look at, you know, this guy's webcast, or I'm going to look at this guy's video, and either, you know, he's full of, you know, crap or, you know, no, I'm going to listen to this guy, you know, and I get to choose. You know, even with the university, you get to choose the university you want to go to. Now, whether they accept you or not is a whole other thing, but you get to choose. Kids don't get to choose. And so they're educated by someone that might not even care about their education. They just want to check. I say that in parallel to the police department.
Yeah.
As you grow, right? You have so many municipalities, you have so many cities, you have this in dire need to have all these cops. I firmly believe that some of them are doing it just for a check, and they don't have I don't, you know, now look, again, I say this with somebody because I don't believe that if you're in the military or you're a policeman or whatever, and I have not been that, so I can't really fairly say, but I'm not gonna say you should not, but your fear, right? It should be a lot of very scared type of a situation, and I think we have cops that are frightened. And you know, whether it's justified or not, I'm not on the street every day. I have no idea, you know, how many people are packing guns or whatever the case may be. But I think if you're doing that job as a regular 9 to 5, hey, I'm just trying to get paid or whatever, I think that's where I think that's where we really have a problem. I think the cops that are really dedicated and really understand the job and really understood from day one what they're getting into.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I feel better about those than the ones that are there that, hey man, hey, this was, this came up at an academy. I did the training, where's my check?
Yeah.
When those things happen, I think you have this happen. And I think you've seen the police force deteriorate, and maybe that's because we need too many of them. I don't know what the actual solution is.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing I think you see in the education system. It's deteriorated because I think that the level of committed teachers aren't really there.
Yeah. Yeah. We're looking at a very specific ground truth problem with an institution that struggles. There are a lot of things that influence what happens on the ground. For example, policy from the last sheriff that just goes, doesn't evolve over time and it becomes institutional norm. Like, this is how we do this. Or the union, and I'm not, it's not a union bash. It's just they create barriers for certain things to happen. And so all of a sudden you have all these systematic things that channel things in a certain direction. And you're right. Capacity of officers is really tough. I'm working on a thing called the Prison Chronicles right now. And one of the things we talk about is correction officer, and you have a senior first off, they can't even talk externally for fear of losing their job, right? That's a problem. And then when you do talk to them, they're like, off the record, I'll talk to you, so I can relate the story. But, this one correction officer, senior person, retired. She's like, okay. And keep in mind, retired and afraid to talk on the record. I have people that are 8 and hit the gate. They're great. They fill a role, but they're not great at their job. They don't want to be great at their job. Then somebody else comes into town, like let's say Tesla shows up and builds a factory. Guess what happens to my workforce? They're like, I'd rather build cars than work in a prison. And so all of a sudden you were really you're under. She's like, I would show up every day with 6.5 hours of work the moment I opened the door, and then chaos starts every day. And I would never get to everything I needed to get to, and it turns into a really hard social problem. And then here's the God's honest truth is, when you look around for the people that are desperate to pay more taxes, to pay for more training and more officers, so a third of the squad can always be off duty, there ain't nobody in that line, So we have these systematic problems that create these horrible outcomes. And until
Absolutely.
we can accept that,
I agree with you.
It's such a, we need to hold people accountable, but goddamn, it is really, really tough. And by the way, we're trying to sell books here. so let me get... Let me get back to your book. So look, first off, I'm into it. I want to check them out. I've never really read a visual novel before, but I want to. So I'm going to, as soon as they're available on pre-sale, you're saying July 1st, pre-sales they start, and then we'll start getting delivery in September. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. I didn't want to do that too early. So July 1, both books will be available for pre-sale. That'll be the Band of Brothers in Volume 1, Knights of the Trinity. And there'll be a couple of episodes, if you just want to do the episodes, that'll be available for pre-order.
Nice. Okay, good.
Full books will be out on September 1st.
And I'll put all that stuff in the show notes. So if you're listening or you're watching, that stuff will be there. And if you can't find it, you can always get a hold of me at Pete A. Turner and on whatever social media, or Pete at Break It Down Show. And I'll send you the notes and the links. And then JB, what's obviously the website, jblion.com, but where else can people get a hold of you? How do you do the interaction thing?
Well, that's the best way to get a hold of me now. I do have a Twitter and another one, Instagram. I'm sorry, I'm not very good with the social media, but I do have Instagram and a Twitter that you guys can reach out to me too. They're being set up right now, so just go to my site and I'll have all of the links there once they're completed, and you can go there and interact with me. Like I said, I'm getting used to have to be socially available.
Yeah,
as an author, you kind of sit in your corner and you do your writing. So I'm getting used to have to be a little bit more social, a little bit more out there.
Well, here's my advice: pick one and be shitty at it, and then when you get better at it, then you can get better at that one. But you don't got to do all of them. Have a presence, and then just work one of them, and then get back in that corner and write, because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what that's what you're good at. And then when I come out to Texas, you and I are going to get together and have a sandwich or a beer or something.
Hey, that sounds great. Cool. Beer's on me for sure.
All right. Well, I'm hoping to be in Texas as soon as I can figure out how to safely travel and not make everybody mad at me,
Yeah. What part of the country?
Orange County, California. So, but I've got people in Texas, and I've got to get this other project out and talk about it. So Houston is the Houston area is on the list, and so is Dallas, and so we'll go out and do that. And actually, I'm going to work on, if I can get it funded, I'm going to work on a project kind of to reflect perspective. This will be interesting to you, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but I want to go out and basically, with the premise of, hey, people aren't deplorable. They're people. They have real problems. What keeps them up at night is not the stuff that we're talking about at the national level. I mean, maybe day to day, but let people be people and show everybody like where folks are at. That on the coast here, we get really dismissive of the rest of the country, and we owe it to ourselves to hear some people out, you know. So I'm hoping to get a chance to do that soon too.
You could solve that problem, man. You could probably cause world peace or make world peace. That's you know, nobody can meet somebody where they're at, and if everybody could do that, boy, it would be a much better place to live for sure.
Hey, well, listen, I appreciate you coming on. Everybody should go check out jblion.com, and the visual novels are there, and they'll be available July 1st, and then totally open to consume on this 1st of September. So I'm excited to see it. You've already sold a couple books with me, and I bet my buddy Brad is going to buy some. So we're doing it. We're selling books, man.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the discussion. It was really great.